tried that first. We said, oh, this is going to be a great way of doing it, really easy. We just pop the windshield wiper fuse out, stick that little thing on, and then plug it back in, and we're done. Well, in the process of pushing that fuse back in, it basically shoved the fuse box contacts back deeper into the fuse box where we couldn't get to it, and now my windshield wipers don't work anymore. So it took us like 2 hours of fiddling around into here to get everything back and working without that piece. So don't even touch that thing. Just leave it in the bag, pretend it doesn't exist. What you could end up doing, and what we did, is you basically detach all the fuse box area from the floorboard so you can pull it out and get to the wires behind the fuse box. Then you find the wire that goes to the windshield wiper fuse, and you use one of those clip-on wire taps where basically you run the wire through the middle and then you close it around the wire, and it basically cuts into the wire and connects to it. That is the best way in this setup to power this system. And then once you have that little clip clamped around your wire running to the hot side of the windshield wipers, then you can take the other piece that just plugs basically into that clip and runs to your Escort. I don't remember off the top of my head if we had to solder the wire together, but it's just a single power wire, so the soldering isn't a big deal. Just make sure you insulate it so you don't get any shorts back here. And then basically when you're putting everything back together, you're really kind of low on space in here. There's not a lot of free space in the vet to begin with, and then when you start putting what is this, like 9 wires and a box and some power wires and some speaker wires and all this stuff in here, you're really going to be low on space. So make sure you use your wire looms, make sure you use zip ties, just make it look professional and do it right. You'll be proud of it when you're done. And so as part of the process of detaching your fuse panels from the car, you're going to need to disconnect some portions of the panels. Once again, it's good if you still have your battery out for this process, so you're not worried about shocking anything, shorting anything out, or damaging the car, or anything like that in there. Once you have your wires routed and you have your loom pulled through that large 4 or 5 inch grommet, then and you have your power source connected and all that's done, then you can lock your, screw your panels back down and lock your fuse boxes back down and get everything back together. Do your silicone your silicone sealant on both sides of that grommet. So before you lock it back down, go ahead and put some silicone in there around the hole you made. And then once you have all that locked down, then you can put your battery back in from the engine compartment and plug all your wires in, and you're good to go. The only remaining tip I would like to give you is concerning the firmware updates from the website. I recently after I did my install, I downloaded the 1.6 version firmware update from the site. My background's in IT, many years of experience, programmer, so on and so forth. I'm a very technical person when it comes to computers. Their update process for their firmware is so buggy. There are many users that have difficulties with it. You need to make sure that you're running as administrator on your computer when you install the software on your computer that does the updating. You need to make sure that the program, when you run it to do the update, is running in administrator mode. You need to make sure that the file that you download that contains the new firmware version is stored in your documents folder, not anywhere else on your computer. That way the program has read and write access to it when it attempts to run. So basically the point is, there's a lot of considerations and possible snags to take into account when you're doing this firmware upgrade. And there's a lot of tips on the forums. Most of the users on the forums are very helpful. A lot of people have tried a lot of different things, and if you keep trying it enough different ways, you'll find one that works. The question really comes down to the firmware that your kit comes with. Is that good enough for you, or do you really want to go through the hassle of trying the firmware upgrade? Because right now, their firmware update process is very buggy. And as a final note on the firmware updating, and a final warning, if you attempt the firmware update and it fails, like it does for a lot of people, there is a high possibility, or at least in my experience, there's a large chance that some piece of your system is not going to function. So you don't do what I did here's another personal experience story. Don't attempt the firmware update and find out, oh, it failed on step 5, and then just say, okay, I'll get to this later. I'll try it again later. I'll figure it out, tomorrow or whatever. That's exactly what I did. I tried it. It failed. I was like, okay, I don't care about this. It was working well enough before I tried this, so I'm just going to leave it alone for now. Got in my car. A couple days of driving later, 120 on the highways, thinking I was immune because I got my new system. And then I was rolling through a city, like doing 15, 20 over, and this cop just like lights me up with his in-car radar, and my radar, just not a peep out of it, not a sound, no warning at all. And so I get pulled over, I get popped, $250 ticket, and I'm asking him, was your radar on? Because I try not to get indignant, but I mean, I didn't think his radar was on because my setup, super expensive radar system didn't even go off. And he's like, yeah, it's just my in-car radar. And so he even sat there and let me drive around him in circles a little bit just to see if I could get it. I pointed my car right at his, not a peep. So I drove to a grocery store, and sure enough, not even the automatic doors would set it off anymore. I knew something was wrong. Turns out it was because I started a firmware update and didn't finish it. So don't do that. If you're going to start it, be prepared to stick with it for as long as it takes until you get a complete good firmware update. And then once it's done, or even if it fails, however it ends up, don't trust in your system until you've tested it. Make sure that your stuff is working again afterwards. All right, guys, I hope you found it useful. Tell me if you do. Tell me if you had a good install and some of the tips in here helped you. Post comments if you have ideas or additional things to add. I'd love to see pictures of your installs, stories about how it went for you. Let me know what you think. Good luck, guys.